I'm so glad you could make it. Sit down, sit down. Oh, yeah. Oh, the band is gonna be awesome tonight. I dig it.
Hey, welcome back to Therapy Sessions. That's Thairapy Sessions. I'm your host, Auntie Hair Coach, and I interview regular people telling real stories about their beauty industry journey. I know that what we do is fun and perceived as glamorous, so it's through sheer audacity that professional stylists and barbers are creating industry disruption in their own unique ways. I've spoken with business owners, industry influencers, educators, innovators, and so much more. We share beauty industry tips, tricks, pitfalls, cheat codes, and everything in between just to remind you that you're not alone. With Therapy Sessions, it is my sincerest intention that by sharing our unique journeys with the world, beauty professionals will be empowered to discover your own uniqueness, which is where your true superpowers lie. So relax, get vulnerable, get inspired, hit that follow button, and be empowered to discover and share your own unique power to contribute to this amazing beauty industry that continues to challenge us all to keep learning, keep growing, and keep reaching for the highest version of ourselves. I'm Auntie Hair Coach, and this is Season 3 of Therapy Sessions.
I'm so glad you could make it.
Hey, welcome back to Therapy Sessions. That's Thairapy Sessions. I'm your host, Auntie Hair Coach, and I interview regular people telling real stories about their beauty industry journey. Today's guest is named Corrigan. Corrigan? Is it Corrigan?
Corrigan, yes.
Corrigan. Their pronouns are they, them, and Corrigan. I can't speak today.
You're good.
Has entered the chat. You're actually my third interview for today, Corrigan.
Oh
So
my gosh.
I don't normally do this many in a day, but when duty calls, what are you going to do?
Hey, get ahead.
Thank you for being here with me today. I
Thank
appreciate you
you.
being here. So I want to kind of share a little bit with the audience about the background. I just met you a few weeks ago at the Danger Jones Unplugged Atlanta class, which was amazing.
Phenomenal. Yes, so good.
And I just remember, so I'm very much, and we talked about this briefly there, I'm very much not anti, but I just get tired of seeing like the same thing with the beauty industry, right?
The status quo.
The status quo. Everybody cannot be tall and thin and blonde hair and blue eyed, right? Like that's just not reality. And so when I saw like your whole look was a vibe, like you were giving on that day.
Thank you.
It was just so interesting. And so I was just like, when I saw you, I'm like, I have to go and talk to this person. I need to know. So thank you for being open.
Of
To chatting
course.
with me.
Yes, no, thank you for the invitation. I love it.
Yes. So my first question is always the same across the board. My audience likes to know who they're dealing with. So tell us, who is Corrigan? Where did you grow up? How did you grow up? Tell us, who are you?
Okay, so I have pretty much been born and raised in the upstate of South Carolina. Currently, I live in Greenville, but I've lived in most towns in the upstate. I did spend a year in college in North Carolina, but outside of that, yeah, pretty much country born and bred, but definitely have always had like more of a artistic city dweller inside. Have always felt more comfortable in city life. So I say that living with Greenville, that's the biggest city I've lived in, and it's more of like a large town. But I grew up, like I said, yeah, grew up in small upstate South Carolina. Corrigan is not my given name. Well, it was not my birth name. That is definitely a chosen name. I am my birth name is literally a country singer. That's how country I am. But if you saw and met me, the look doesn't match the
The name?
the name or the background for sure. Yeah, I'm named after Randy Travis.
Oh,
And
good
yeah,
Lord.
it's when I say country as country can get, it's pretty bad. But uh, I take it with me, and I appreciate where I came from, but I definitely didn't fit in from the get-go, and uh, always had a little bit of like a rebellious side to me, and it wasn't necessarily something I chose in to have, but it was just something that kind of came out because I was so different from everyone else. And growing up, there was times where it was dark. It was real dark. And luckily I can say that I found art and art found me, and I enjoy what I do with hair, but I definitely look at it from a creative point of view, and keep that creative spark in me, because without it, like, I wouldn't be where I am now. And so with me, it's always going to be, uh, you know, I'm not afraid to do anything when it comes to hair, but as long as I'm having fun and as long as there's like some kind of creative outlet, um, that's really what I strive for. And I think that kind of comes along with the Corrigan experience. Um, I'm very awkward. I let people know I'm very awkward from the get go. When I'm nervous, I talk, which is great for a podcast setting, and great for hair because luckily, I going back to the status quo. I started out at Great Clips, and when I tell you I had to work my numbers and get my numbers up to where I was second, if not first, but it was through hard work and perseverance and ignoring the weird looks I'd get from people approaching, like when they first got to meet me, because I was working in Liberty, South Carolina, a tiny little town, and at the time I was, fresh out of high school and was very, very up in your face about my rebellious nature, and very punk rock looking, but also like I would wear 6-inch heels to work
What?
at Great Clips. Like I don't, and I look back now because I've been licensed now for 12 years and or going on 12 years. And back then I was a badass. Like I mean, and don't get me wrong. Like I have my areas where there's a couple years here and there where I look exactly how I wanted to look at the time and didn't care what people thought. And you know, but to think that I did that in one of the smallest areas towns that I worked, and one of the more conservative areas that I worked, and did not care how I looked.
Yeah.
And I love it. But and I went from there into an area where I made it to a managerial position at a barber shop, and I did that for 3 years, and that was probably where I lost touch with that inner rebel. Was
Mm.
during those 3 years, because from day one, I knew that the shop had really good following, and it was one of those places I didn't really have to work on making a clientele. The clientele was already there. I just had to prove that I knew what I was doing in order to make a wedge in there with the clientele that were already coming in. So it was already a well-established place, and it was my big boy job, and that's the way
Wait,
I
wait,
viewed
wait.
it.
So wait, before you
Yeah.
move forward, because I want to
Hmm.
back up. I want
Yes.
people to be able to see your growth here.
Yeah.
So let's back up a little bit. Did you always want to be a hairstylist?
Um, I considered it more of a hobby growing up, the idea of doing hair, because I was doing my own hair, and I started doing my own hair when I was 13, and really expressing myself through high school, and going back to that kind of punk rebellious stage. My hair has been anything and everything, any color or any style. And I was lucky enough to where at the school that I had, I think they may have thought I was a high risk chance, because they never said anything to me about my color or my haircuts, but they would
Uh,
say it to other people. I got away with it. I don't know how. I was the quiet kid who stayed in the corner, and maybe that's why I got away with it. But um, we moved around a lot. We'll just say that, and I was an at risk child. Didn't even know it at the time, but I think maybe that's why I got away with it. But I was really lucky that I got away with that, because that was a really important thing for me, was to be able to be creative through my hair. But like I would honestly say, like, the movie Edward Scissorhands had a huge impact on me as a kid, as far as loving the idea of hair and making art out of hair. Something like that kind of impacted me as a child. But I had actually gone to college for special effects and wigs for theater and film. and
Okay.
did that after I got my license. And so that was kind of the plan at that point, was to go into more film and theater.
Okay.
And I had my license as more of a backup plan, and because I did my license first. But it was just a way that I could combine my artistic flair with a profession, and in my mind still have what I considered a real job, which I can't stand that when people look at the arts and say that's not a real job.
Mhm.
I had that pressure, but I took that pressure and said, well, what about hair? There's always money in hair. There's always need for hairstylists, and even if we are in a recession, you still have to have your hair done, and you still have to you know go and have that experience, because it is an important part of the I don't professional world, and so it was just a way to combine the two, to where I still, in my mind, was doing everyone else proud, but still being able to be an artist and um, have my creative flair that I found to be absolutely necessary. Um, because I was never meant for the 9 to 5 office type of life. That's just not me.
Yes. 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 So I'm sorry, you said you went to college briefly?
uh, yes, I was not able to finish. It
Okay.
was too expensive. I was the degree that I was going for is not offered in South Carolina, but reciprocity isn't an option for the arts, or at least it wasn't at the time, because I didn't see it
Okay.
as essential. So I
I
should
gotcha.
have, because I couldn't find my degree in the state, I should have been offered in state in North Carolina, but that just didn't work out that way, unfortunately. So I could only go for a year, and then I had to come back. Um,
Gotcha.
yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, scholarship money from my grades wasn't enough.
Understood.
Yeah,
Understood.
yeah.
Okay. And then before we get into because I do want to do kind of a deep dive into the individual places that you work.
Yeah.
But you mentioned to me that you moved away from your family at 17.
Yes.
Um, do you mind sharing about that a little
Oh
bit?
yeah, no, of course. So at the best of times, I would say that my relationship with most of my family was strained. At the worst of times, no interaction with them at all. Currently, I'm silent with everyone in my family as far as brothers and parents. But my father was very abusive growing up, and my mom was absent. She had my half brothers, and I stayed with my dad. So even then, I didn't see my brothers growing up that much. But there was a lot of animosity, I think, that was driven between me and my brothers, and I think that my father was part of that, because he would treat them one way, his stepkids, and treat me another way, and they saw it as I was being treated, the way they should have been treated, and it wasn't the truth. The truth was is I was getting treated like that in front of them, and behind the scenes when they weren't around, I was being abused, and um, it that happened for years, and I started working, in high school when I was 16, and I ended up at one point supporting our household by myself, and because he was unemployed and was getting used to me making money, and he was collecting unemployment checks, and this was during, I think, the right before the 2008, like when the economy was really bad back then.
Mhm.
um, and I was working full time while going to high school, which still don't know how I did that, and was paying for the bills, while I was told I was paying for half while he was paying the other half, and come to find out only half was being paid by me, and he was using the rest for extracurricular activities, drugs,
I
and
gotcha.
so we were constantly fighting homelessness, and eventually, I was at that point, I was always told I can't talk back, I can't have a voice for myself until I pay my own bills and make my own way. And that's when I'm an adult. And so at 16, I was paying my bills, and I started, having a voice for myself. And oh, Randy did not like that,
Mm,
because he would cuss me out and verbally abuse me, and I started giving it back, because your bills are being paid by me now.
yeah.
And I did what you said. I became an adult. And he didn't like that. And so that didn't last very long. I couch surfed for from 17 until 18, until I was able to get my own apartment, and I dropped out of high school when I was 18. I forgot to tell you that part. So I dropped out of high school a week after I turned 18. I had basically a mental breakdown because working full time and I had a lot of emotional issues, especially with if you again. I was paying my way. I was doing what you're supposed to. I was being told I was supposed to do to be considered an adult. Going to a school and having teachers disrespect me, what I saw as disrespect, because again, I thought I was an adult. I didn't
Mm.
do well with that, so I never was a bad child as far as lashing out or anything like that. I never got written up, nothing like that. But I stayed to myself, stayed quiet, and if I didn't have respect for you as a teacher, you could best believe I'm not doing your homework and I'm not taking what you want me to do home and taking up my time. I was a lot going on. And, but at the same time, I would, those teachers, I would take their tests and make A's on them just to prove I know what I'm doing. I just don't
Mhm.
have time for you at my house
Mm.
because you don't have time to respect me when I'm in your house. I'm not doing it. And, so it was a caustic situation where I was basically harming myself and giving myself bad grades for the teachers I emotionally didn't like and didn't
Mhm.
respect, and I was only punishing myself at that point. But
Yeah.
I dropped out the week after my birthday, and I could legally sign myself out. And that same week, went and got my apartment. Um, because I was done couch surfing at that point. I was over it, and I went through. So I did 2 stints of college. I went through a program through Tri County Tech, and I got my high school diploma through college credit. So I was basically taking college credit classes, getting college credit, and supplementing my high school diploma. The high school credits I didn't have, I supplemented them with college credit. So I graduated from that program at 21, and went from being a dropout to having my high school diploma and 3 credits of college. Because I found out that college was a perfect environment for me because I was already um, taking on a lot of myself responsibility for myself. College was all about taking responsibility for yourself, and if you got into the social cues and the social uh, uh, drama and didn't hone in on your grades, you weren't going to make it. So I needed that. I needed that structure. I needed that. Let me just prove that I can do that I'm intelligent, that I know what I'm doing, and that I can pass these grades, get on with my life, and take back control of a situation that I was handed. And so
Yeah.
I did that, and then left Tri County after those 3 semesters, and then immediately that summer started hair school at
Okay.
21. Yes,
Oh.
um, and then went through that, did the year program with that, and that following uh, fall was in North Carolina for wigs and makeup. Did that for a year, had the unfortunate experience of you're poor, you can't go to college, and even with a 3.7 GPA, I did not get enough money for scholarships. So
Oh.
I did what I did my best, and that's fine. I mean, I do go through moments of bitterness with, damn, I really could be not necessarily in LA or something like that, but I could be working for an opera house or for my goal was horror movies. That's where I fell in love with horror movies as a child, and whether or not I should have been watching them, that's up for debate. But that's where I grew into love it, and looked at the creativity behind how these people make gore look so real, and like it just fascinated me. It didn't scare me. It
Yeah.
was like it was more of the wow, they really made that look so cool and
Yeah.
so real and so gruesome. And so
Absolutely.
even with like I also paint. Like I paint, I draw. I bring in little quirks of horror in my themes, and I think I feel like a lot of people who go through trauma have like a connection with horror because a lot of horror tells its story through trauma, and I think that's a
Mm.
good outlet for
Mm.
me. And
Sure.
I definitely put a lot of that and put a lot of that in my style. It's always cute but a little creepy, and
Yeah.
cute with a little horror element, and
Yeah.
and you've seen me. I'm heavily tattooed, but
Yes.
I don't think that I think that I have a sweet personality. I think that I have a sweet disposition, but it's also there's that rebel of please fuck around and find out because
Yeah.
like uh, you know there's trauma there. There's 100% trauma there, but um, I think that I'm a good person, and I think that I lead by example with that. But it is just there's definitely, a spooky vibe there, and you may not get that vibe when you first meet me, but I think I'm a sweetheart.
I got the impression that you were a sweetheart as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
That's why I felt comfortable approaching you.
Luckily, the way that I look, because heavily tattooed, pierced, there are times where I'm wearing more feminine clothing, and um I get the benefit of bigots usually run away from me out in public. If they want it, they usually don't approach me, and I get really lucky that I don't have a lot of Karen moments or people that would
Mm-hmm.
normally don't harass me.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
sound like I make it sound like I look terrifying or something, but it's just, again, I never felt like I fit in with the status quo. And as I
Yeah.
got older, my outside started matching my inside. And um, that's why
Yeah.
that 3 year stint at that shop was so hard, because during those
Yeah.
times I wore jeans and t-shirts every single day, and the shirts were literally shirts from the shop. Like, they were the shop logo, and that's the only thing I would do. I
Yeah.
never had color in my hair. There was literally a time where one of the girls that one of the women I worked with literally said, um, I don't think we could work together if you had lime green hair. Me 10 years ago would have went home and immediately dyed my hair lime green and came back
Yeah.
and laughed.
Yeah.
I let that get to me, and I can't believe that. I actually let them put me in a box and
Yeah.
allow myself to put me in a box. And the money was good. The money was good. That's the
Yeah.
only reason why I stuck around for those 3 years, but I regret it. Um,
Yeah. No, and that's so relatable
yeah.
because while my gender, how do you my my gender and the way that I present match, right?
Hmm.
I don't
Yeah.
know, is that the right way to say that?
Yeah.
So I don't have that struggle, but I definitely can relate to biting your tongue so
Hmm.
that you're not saying things that are going to get you fired, right? Because we need
Right.
things like, I need this job, I got to pay my rent. So Karen is over here talking crazy, and I'm just going to
Hmm.
change the subject or walk away because I got to pay my rent this month.
Yep. Or you do the where you literally disassociate the whole time,
Yes.
or you have to do the oh,
Mhm.
okay. Oh,
Smiling line.
wow. Like, you have to do
Mhm.
you have to fill in with absolutely no
Yeah.
thought, because if you actually think about what you're doing,
Mhm.
you almost feel shameful. It's almost shameful. Like,
Yeah.
and it's not right to have that forced upon you,
Mhm.
and luckily where I work now is the exact opposite. If you bring any kind of bigoted nonsense into that
Yeah.
shop, you're not going to be welcome. I mean,
You
and I
literally can
love
leave.
that.
Like you
Yeah,
can
you
leave.
literally could just not, right? And I love that, and I love that they
Right.
stand by that. And
Yeah.
with us as the employees, the owner will 100% back us on that. And
I
you
love.
know, try to make us feel uncomfortable. I dare you. Like,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen.
Right. No,
You
I
know,
love that.
yeah.
So tell me about, my mind is still stuck on the fact that you were wearing 6-inch heels at Great Clips. Okay. What?
Yes.
And I
So,
remember, no, go ahead.
oh, well, so, I was definitely about 100 pounds lighter, and definitely, my feet. I at least I bought Jeffrey Campbell's, and they weren't so bad on my feet.
Okay.
But so I definitely could have been worse on myself. I definitely
How
can't wear
did
them as
Great
much
Clips,
now.
how did Great Clips respond to that? They were
Surprisingly, they were completely fine. They were
okay.
completely open. They accepted me completely.
Okay.
Which, as I'm saying that now, is very, very surprising. But I have had a few Karen moments of dealing with bigots and dealing with just Karen in general. And my first experience with a Karen outside of once I was licensed, was actually at that Great Clips, and we were working. It was a normal day, and just so happened our area manager was in the shop at the time, and she was just running some diagnostics, things like that, and getting some numbers, and just was in there doing a regular thing. But she was in there, and our manager was there, and maybe it was me and one other person. It was a slow day, and these two gentlemen came in, and um, one gentleman was paying for the other one's haircut, and I was doing his haircut, but the other man paid for it. And at first they kind of looked at me, and I'm used to that. They give you they pause, they look at you up and down, and then we can go from there. They're going to go one of two ways. They're either going to walk out or say no, or keep going with the haircut, or keep going and sit in my chair. Well, the man getting the haircut had no problem. He came and sat in my chair. He was a little hesitant at first, and I could tell. Then we started talking, and it was just totally fine. Like we had a good time. Come to find out, the other man was paying for his haircut because his house had recently burnt down, and he was trying to get back on his feet. I think he had like something lined up with a job interview or something like that. So the friend was paying for it to help him out. Great, awesome. We got to talking. Everything was fine. And then all of a sudden, I hear a commotion, something getting louder at the where we checked out and at the till. And my area manager was talking to the other man who was paying. Well, apparently the other man had said something along the lines of he didn't want to pay for a faggot to cut his friend's haircut, or to cut his friend's hair. And my area manager literally looked at him and said, "Sir, we can go one or two ways with this. You can pay and leave, or I can call the cops and make you leave, and you're still going to pay for his haircut." And you know, like I said, it was actually, it didn't get very loud, but she handled it right then and there, and I didn't even really know what was going on because I was enjoying my time with the client, and we were just having good rapport, and I was doing my job. Until afterwards, and the area manager asked me if I was okay and everything. It was if I needed to take the rest of the day off, if I needed any kind of emotional support, anything like that. And I was asking what happened, and because I didn't even hear the whole thing, and she told me, and I said, "No, I'm fine, I'm good." Like, but also it was more just surprising that they were so willing and free to back me in that situation.
Absolutely.
You know, and
I'm shocked by that, actually.
yeah.
I'm not sure why I wouldn't expect that at Great Clips.
I was thoroughly well, and you know, to be fair, now they are franchisee owned, so it could just have been I got lucky with a great area manager. You know, because she did all through the upstate. There was about 12, I think. I think we had one of the largest franchisee bubbles, whatever you want to call it. They had 12 of those shops, and so they had one of the larger franchisees, and I had met them, and they were nothing out of the normal. They were your stereotypical rich white people, the people that owned the franchise. But I guess that they had good values. I mean, it seems that way for them to have an area manager who was so quick to go from 0 to 100 with that man, and dealt with it in a professional way, and didn't get loud. Just told him this isn't going to happen here. And yeah, I thought that was amazing. And actually, it is funny. I didn't even really think about that much until you just brought it up, how lucky I got in that situation. Absolutely. And I've had one other experience with someone like that, and it was when I worked at for a while. I was working at Salon Centric as well as booth renting, and same thing. Had a woman get irate because we had a sale that was up that was not going to come into effect until that following Monday, but we had everything approved that you could put the sales rack out, and as long as you told them that they couldn't get it today, they could get it Monday. You could even get the items and put it in a bag, set it to the side. It was totally fine. Like, it was just we knew our people. Salon Centric, you had to be licensed to even walk in. We knew our clientele. It was a small shop, or a small store, and you know, it wasn't a big deal. Well, this woman came in and immediately went to that sales rack, gave her the whole spiel, and she immediately went into, "So you're telling me I can't get the price that it's listed as right now?" I said, "Well, ma'am, it's meant for Monday, but you know, same thing. You can come back, you can pay over the phone. We can hold it for you as long as you want." And she just went in and said, "You're what's wrong with America, and you're one of the worst he, she, whatever you are I've ever dealt with." Like, she called me an it. It was great. It's fine. I got her banned. After she left, I got her banned, and you know, you we're kind of like the DMV of the hair salon, of the hair world, because we get your information, and we have your license number. We know who you are. We can have you banned from all stores, and that's exactly what happened to her. And you know, she threatened to have her husband come in and fight me, basically, because it was a whole nuts thing. It was bizarre, but
all because you couldn't save like $3 on bleach.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was insane. It was literally insane. And I dealt with it in a funny way. I threw my hands up, I laughed, and I said, ma'am, go ahead and let me have it, because if this saves the next retail person who has to deal with you from having a horrible time, let it out on me. I don't care. It was even funnier. I had never had an issue there. I was there for 3 years. I was working my 2 weeks. She came in over my 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I had even less to
Yeah.
to lose at that point. But
Yeah.
I smiled and laughed at her, and I really pissed her off because when she headed out the first time, I said, "Have a good day," and threw on a little extra kindness, and she came back and yelled at me some more. It was great. Yeah,
Whenever people go straight to dehumanizing someone,
right. You're now lower than me. You're not
yes,
on my level. You immediately have shown your true colors and what kind of person you are, and you shouldn't be allowed to. You need to go back and take the human exam because you're not humaning right at that point.
absolutely.
You need to learn how to human, because that's not the way to do it. And luckily I love the whole Karen phenomenon that happened, with
Yeah,
calling it what it is and having the name Karen to go with that type of
yeah.
attitude, because we've all seen it. Anyone who's
Mhm,
older than 20, 30,
mhm,
we've seen it. We just didn't know what to call it. We've seen
mhm.
that, and unfortunately, I mean, and a lot of times there is a racial backing to it for a lot of those people. And so I think before that term Karen came, I think we just saw them as entitled racists. I think they are synonymous a lot of the times. So,
Mhm.
I love that, as much as I don't like social media, I'll be the first one to admit it. I am not a fan of social media because of where it can go, the negatives that can come with it.
Mhm.
I do think that the social repercussions that social media has had on people has been one of the positives. Um, I think that the term cancel culture is silly. I think it's um, you're getting you, it's the consequences of your actions.
Mhm.
You can't be a victim of cancel culture if you don't do heinous things. If you
Yeah,
don't do things that can get you canceled, there's nothing to
yeah,
fear. There's
yeah.
nothing to fear.
Well,
So,
and I think that it's funny, like even the term cancel culture is like it's where you've got this group of Karens and Kevins who
mhm,
have taken this word cancel or even cancel culture and they've made it into something that fits their narrative. They've
yes.
co-opted language and made it into something just like the word woke,
Woke. I
right?
was
Where
thinking the
they,
same thing. I'm so
yeah,
glad you said that. Yeah.
like, so you've co-opted this language, you don't even know what it means,
Right.
clearly, and
Literally.
you're using it in a way that like doesn't make sense. Like
It's a form of gaslighting. It's a form of gaslighting. It's a
you're
form
for
of
sure,
manipulation. It goes
for sure.
to, not to go political, but, it goes into
You
a
always be a
similar
political.
situation. Well, it goes into a similar situation of, well, if they find anything on me, you go ahead and say that it's a lie. Well, why are you already talking about stuff being found? What's
Mm-hmm.
there to be found? Like you're literally trying to gaslight the situation because you know it's about to come to a head.
Oh,
You're already saying that woke is a bad word because you're about to say some offensive shit to
mm-hmm.
piss off a majority of people or a group of people. You're already coming in with that preface because you know you're about to say some bigoted stuff. Like,
Yeah,
so you're trying to gaslight people into seeing that word woke, which I'm sorry, we're now making fun of people for being intelligent enough to grow as a race, as a community.
society,
You're
yeah.
literally trying to say that being intelligent enough to know that these things that we used to say are offensive now and we should grow from them. You're trying to make that negative.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why is growing as a human race and doing better a bad thing? Why is
Yeah.
inclusiveness a bad thing? Because you
The
want to
same
push
people
your.
who are saying those things also want America to be great, like it was in the
Oh yeah,
50s.
yeah.
So,
Great
yeah,
from which time of history?
yeah,
What part of history is so great?
yeah.
Because if we really want to look at history, we can look at it from a gender point of view, where pink used to be masculine and blue used to
Mm-hmm.
be feminine, and men wore high heels to be taller than their counterparts, and you didn't even know what a woman's body looked like because they wore hoop skirts to give this false narrative of what their hips looked like. Because the
Mm-hmm.
bigger the hips, the more the the better the prize or what. It's like, but
Yeah.
what part of history do you really want to go back to? Do you want to go back when it was very normal to have a platonic relationship between two men that would also grow into a physical relationship, because that's what they would do in Grecian times and Roman times, and that's why you had better armies, because the men that were fighting beside each other loved each other. Do you want to go back to that point? Like, what part of history? What time do you want to go back? Because you can twist that and make it anyone's narrative.
Yeah.
But we
No,
don't
I
want to we
love
don't
it.
want to think about it from that point of view. That's too woke. That's
Yeah.
that bad word.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
it's I took philosophy, and this is the whole allegory of the cave of being able to read between the lines. It's a blessing and a curse, because unfortunately I see these posts and I see these angles and I see these articles and I see through it for where your point of view is just coming through so blatantly that you're losing the truth in the narrative. And that's what it's become a narrative and no longer the truth.
Mm.
And it sucks being surrounded by people who can't see it for what it is, because there's only there's a little part of you that can just feel like, oh, we really are doomed, because
Yeah.
these people really don't see it for what it is.
Yeah.
They'll still donate to a millionaire to pay for his legal fees. Like, they'll still, what? Why are we paying millionaires and billionaires to pay for their legal fees that they got themselves in?
Yeah.
And but gas is the way it is right now, or groceries are the way it is. It's no longer a fight between right and left. It's right and wrong.
Yeah.
And we all pay the same damn bills. We all pay the over expensive groceries. We all are paying the same dollar amount for these things that are getting more and more expensive. And we're losing the middle class, and we're getting more and more poverty. But you still have all these people who are literally worshiping these rich people who are telling them how to believe, how to think, how to go about their day. They
Mm-hmm.
don't look out for you. They want you to
Mm-hmm.
stay poor so that they can keep collecting more and more money.
Yeah.
But you have these people who literally worship them, and I don't understand it. I don't get it, and I'm glad I don't get it, because
Yeah.
that tells me I'm thinking clearly, at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's insane.
Yes. All of that. So let's talk about this barber shop that you worked in,
Yeah.
because you shared with me that it was a really kind of hyper masculine environment, which is
Yes.
exactly, I think, what I would have expect from a barber shop,
Mhm.
especially, not in, I feel like post 2020
Mhm.
and pre 2020, like there's that line there, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I would expect from it. But I think this could be a really good learning opportunity for barbershop owners,
Mhm.
because, nobody's ever fully staffed, right? It's rare to find a salon or
Right.
barbershop that's fully staffed. They're always
Right.
looking for help.
Mhm.
But then someone walks in your door who maybe looks a little different than the norm,
Mhm.
and you have not created a safe space for them. So, kind of share a little bit of your experience at the barbershop, and maybe what are some things that a salon or barbershop owner could do that to create a more inclusive, safe environment for people who are non-gender conforming,
Mhm.
not non-binary, to come and feel comfortable working there.
You know, it it's one of those things. To me, it's as simple as whoever walks through those doors is welcome. And if it's a thing of you have staff that don't necessarily know how to give exactly what they're wanting, that's one thing. If you have staff and yourself have a certain feeling towards, if someone comes in and they're someone like me, where you can't really tell the gender, or you know that there's something different, um and say hypothetically they come in and they have long hair and they want to look more masculine at the end of this haircut, and they want to have those features be sharpened and shortened and, like I said, made more masculine. You should have a staff that is 100% willing to do that. Whether or not they can do that, that's a different thing. Like, you can forgive not having the skill techniques to do it, but versus I don't think you should have that because you're not fitting my narrative of what a man and a woman should look like. That is, I'm sorry, but we're in an industry that's supposed to be lifting people up, making them feel better about themselves. And what you just did was the exact opposite. And, so I think I told you, day one, I knew about this barbershop and I knew that it was a really, really good barbershop to get in with for the money. And I reached out to them and I went and I made sure that they saw me and I went in and I got, I literally went in because the owner was so busy that he was very, very, quick to be flippant and say that he'll get back with you and then not. And so I literally booked a haircut with them so that they were forced to talk to me for 30 minutes and had my interview with him in his chair. Because no, I want this job. I'm tired of not, at that time I was working in an even smaller town, and where they expected a color to start at $60. Not me. That's not going to be me. I can't do that. I no. To look the way I looked, it was expensive. And so I needed to go to the next step. They want this, and that area they still expect no more than $80 to pay for a base haircut color. It's insane. It's insane. And I can't do that. And I knew I couldn't do that. And so I reached out to this place. Like I said, I made myself be known. And I was actually working at the time at a Belk, and that lasted for all in their salon, and that lasted all of 2 weeks. Because I did not like working for commission. Anyways, so I got myself I made myself get that job and push for that job. But the day he hired me, he said, you're gonna have to tone it down if you want to have clientele in this shop, because we do have a very male dominant clientele. They're not gonna know how to take you. And at the time, I already told myself I was gonna have to do that. At least to some degree, I knew I was gonna have to. I've been professionally gay for 32 years. I know how to blend in. I know how to not, and in the South of all places, I know how to blend in. But that was going to happen either way. But what I have learned to do with my clientele, especially my straight male clientele, is the ones that I get a feel for, the ones that get to know me, the ones that get to grow that trust, they get to know these things about me. They get to hear me refer to my partner as he and not they. And, those little tricks that I know how to do and go undetected. I know how to do that. You didn't have to tell me that. But the fact that you did tell me that tells you where your priorities are, and it's not over my well-being. And I didn't know it at the time. I didn't click on it at the time. I just saw the paycheck, and I'm guilty of that. I sold a little piece of myself for that money. And at the same time, I knew that it wasn't going to be a permanent thing, because let me collect my money now. Let me put it aside. Let me get out of this situation. Let this be a building block to the next step where I can actually be myself and have this situation end up being a happy ending. So I did that for 3 years. I worked my way up to manager. I think after the first year, I got offered managerial position. So I did that for 2 years. With that situation, the safe space was probably the tip of the iceberg, it not being a safe space. I will say that I created a safe workspace in my station. And anyone that came in that was queer or different, or usually any kind of long hair, even came to me. So women came to me. People who were just in general different, they immediately saw me and came and gravitated towards me. And luckily I have the haircutting skills to back it up. And so I did grow any queer, diverse clientele that was in that shop. They were with me. They were in my chair. And I was proud of that.
And queer people always have the coolest hair.
Yes.
I don't know what that is.
Well, and it's, I actually have a little bit of a curse with the fact that all of my friends are punk rock, and they all do their own freaking hair, and they all do it well. And I'm like, I can't even be mad at you, because I do the same thing. We all have our own unique style and all that, and they're all creative, and we're all a little freaky. And I'm like, damn it. I want you to sit in my chair at least because I can do it too, and I want to have fun. But I can't be
Mhm.
mad because you're having fun and doing it to yourself, and it looks good. Can't even be mad about it.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, I definitely am lucky that I have gravitated people and towards me, and that I've gravitated towards people, and we have this chosen family. And I love my queerdos and weirdos, and that's the nickname I give us. And um that place definitely didn't have that option. And I don't know how much longer I would have stayed, but we went into it. So I left during 2020, that place, and it wasn't even because of the dilemma of it not being diverse. What's funny is over the time I was there, we actually had kind of a mass exodus of some people that had been there for 10 years and
Mhm.
were older, and were those people who aren't going to give you a different haircut. They're going to see you as a paper,
Mhm.
as a carbon copy of the next person. You had to get the status quo haircut. You couldn't get anything that was weird and different and unique. They left. They actually skedaddled and didn't say a word to the owners, two of them, and then they brought two other people with them. So they screwed over, literally, they screwed over the owners. And that should have been a red flag then, because that was, if to me, I believe in karma in the sense of, if you do things that are terrible to people and you're willing to do things that are terrible to people, you're going to
Mhm.
attract people who are also willing to do bad things to people. That's how
Mhm.
you, and you can't have trust with those people. Eventually,
Mhm.
it's going to catch up to you. Eventually, one of those people in your circle is going to screw you over the way you're willing to screw other people over. And that's
Yeah.
what happened. They screwed them over. So then we had this new transition in the shop, and it was me and a lot of people who were 30 and younger, where we had a lot of people who were older kind of calling the shots and blatantly ignoring me as the manager. They had no respect for the fact that I was the manager, because I was younger than them, because I
Mhm.
had less experience than them.
Mhm.
They didn't like that, and that's fine. That's fine. But we had a transition of, now we have people who are 2, 3 years at most out of school. So you now have a position where they're actually giving me respect and listening and help and taking the advice that I'm giving, because it was meant from good place. I
Mhm.
never would purposely steer my staff wrong. And there was a point of peace. There was a lot of peace at that time. Then we got another person who came in, and she'd been doing it for 20 years and didn't want to hear that someone younger was the manager at the time. And I was already manager at the time, and she had to respect that. She didn't,
Mhm.
but that's okay. Um, we we had her, and then we had the rest of us, and we smoothed things over as much as possible. Well, at the time, 2020 was happening, COVID was happening, and we were forced out of the shop for 7 weeks. And she up and quit that day because the owners were guilt tripping us into not making us pay booth rent for those 7 weeks.
Mhm.
It's like, what do you expect? We're not working. We get
What? They
$600
don't make you
checks.
pay booth rent?
They made us feel bad for not making us pay booth rent for the 7 weeks we were shut down. Yeah. Um, Mind you, again, I was making 50K a year. Like,
Mhm.
this was a very well 50K on credit cards. It was actually more than that because of cash. So it was more like 70K probably was my best year that I had there. And that was as manager. I know they were making more than that.
Yeah.
The wife worked in a salon in the back. It was just her. She would try to keep staff, but she didn't work well with others, and so it was usually just her in that salon. In the
Mm.
back room, the front room was the barber shop, and we had a staff of 10. And in our heyday, we stayed 10. When I was manager, we stayed at 10.
Okay.
Um, and so we were doing well. The shop was doing well. You can't say that you weren't making money, but you still guilt tripped us and still made it awkward. So she quit that day. So we
Okay.
did our 7 weeks. We came back, and the husband, the owner of the barbershop part, went and he started working from home, and he stayed working from home for 6 months, 5 months after we got back from COVID's the forced staying at home. Um, she stayed in the back room and worked in the salon. Well, we got to talking, me and my staff, and figured out that a lot of the drama that was happening before the mass exodus and the little bit of drama that was trying to happen while we were there was coming from them. It all came back from them. They were literally pinning us against each other. And it was one of those things, don't talk about each other's wages kind of thing. You keep your staff fighting and not talking. That's how you do that. They were manipulating us. And this was all coming to light during this 5 months where he wasn't there to do that to us. We all got to really get close and know each other, and it was great. That was honestly the best 5 months that we had there. The only little bit of problems that we would have would come from the back room, from the wife. And it got more and more bizarre. Pretty, I can't say names or anything like that because I'm not going to have a lawsuit for them. But we were pretty sure that she was doing extracurricular activities in the bathroom. At 3:30 every single day for 30 minutes, she disappeared and came out a different person. And it got to a point where she would come out to the front and do that to our clients and be like that in front of our clients. And, we would have to put ourselves between her and the clients and put our bodies literally between us because she would not leave them alone, and she would get weirder, weirder, and weirder. And we would hear things about rumors that he wasn't actually working from his house, doing haircuts from his house, because he was immunocompromised was the excuse that we were given. That he was actually selling the extracurricular activities from his house instead and making money that way. So this was all kind of building up, and there was just more and more things that weren't settling and weren't sitting right with me. And I was fearing for my staff at that point. And I think it was September, going into October of 2020. The owner of the building came in and made me and one of my staff aware that they hadn't paid rent for 5 months and that we were being evicted, and we had a month. And he even offered me and that other person to take over the lease. And because he knew that we were there, that we had been there for 5 months doing and running that shop for them. And, it was a big shocker. I can't, that's a lie. It really wasn't that much of a shocker now looking back at it. But, they had gone 6 months without paying their bills, and that last month, up until the day that it was our last day of working, they lied and said that there was no eviction. That was all a lie. It was his way of weaseling them out. He didn't like them. It was all this personal stuff, blah, 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 blah. The last Saturday that we worked, now, mind you, I told all of my staff, find a place, have a backup plan, get in with another shop. Do not let them screw you over, because I'm afraid they will. They will leave you high and dry, so get a backup plan. And they all did. I helped them if they needed it. I gave them recommendations. Find another spot. We'll work this last 30 days, but the day that we have to leave, we have to leave. And again, had not heard a word. So we were working that last Saturday. The hour before we closed, he sent out a mass text, said that everything was okay. We had another 2 weeks because he was friends with the police force and was friends with the sheriff's department, because it was a cop and army barbershop as well. But that we would have 2 weeks as long as the sheriff's department helped us. Mind you, again, this whole time, up until this day, they denied that the eviction was even happening. So the hour before, they finally admitted it and said that we could get another 2 weeks, but that we should take our tools and everything with us home every single night in case they changed the locks on us, because legally they could.
Wow.
And so it went from 0 to 100 real quick. And I told them, I said, no, we all have another job lined up. We are all leaving. This is done. And then immediately the gaslighting started. And well, y'all ruined the shop. Y'all drove it down for 6 months and made it inhospitable. And clients no longer come in for you guys because of it. And it was all my fault that the place was being shut down. Somehow it was my fault. The manager whose job wasn't to pay the bills, was to run your shop. I somehow ran it down. But, and recently since then, so that happened in 2020. So December 2020, I had gotten hired on with the new shop. And so 2 months I went without work. But that was when the $600 checks were coming in, at least for South Carolina. So I was living off that for 2 months. And finally got in with this new place, and I immediately said, I do not want to be the manager. I have done it. I am good at it, but hell no.
Mhm.
That is not what I want. And if it ever got offered again, if we got a second shop or something, maybe I would think about it then, because I went into it very hesitant and
Mm.
very guarded, because I had really been shafted so hard by these two people, and blood, sweat, and tears went into it, and literally, again, I gave up part of my identity for them, and
Yeah.
at the end of the day, they gaslit me
Yeah.
and burnt every bit of trust I had. So it, I went into it not like a bad relationship, like a bad ex. I didn't hold anything against the owner of the new shop, but I definitely went in reserved, and slow to let people in to know who I am. And again, it went from the complete opposite of, they said, no, we want you to be you. We want you to wear whatever the hell you want in here. Wear your nails, wear your makeup, do whatever the
Yes.
hell you want,
Yeah.
and be you, because that's what's going to make people happy with you. And luckily in Greenville, we're still definitely in a conservative state, but Greenville is really, really trying to push for some progression. We're not
Yeah.
trying to be 50 years behind anymore. We might still be 10 years behind, but we're not trying to be 50 years behind.
Yeah.
Where I came from, still 20, 30 years behind.
Yeah.
And ironically, I talk about karma, that those old business owners, they moved to downtown Anderson, where they were, and nearby to where they were, and recently their profile kept coming up as recommended on Facebook, and I got a little nosy and just scrolled a little bit. They got shafted again by an employee. The
Wow.
employee left them and redirected all of the business phone calls to their cell phone, and said that the owners were leaving medical reasons, they weren't doing
Get
care
out.
anymore, and took that clientele with them.
Get.
And I still think it's karma. You're willing to screw people over, people are willing to screw you over, and
Wow.
I can honestly say that I never did anything. I said what I said to them that day and blocked them on my
Yeah.
cell phone, and that's it. I haven't talked to them. I have stayed clear. It just was, it felt right at the time. I think it was the right moment at the time to just
Yeah.
barely look at what they have been going through, and the petty me says I feel good about it.
Absolutely.
I can still stay petty. It's fine.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, so like I said, I did have to restart my clientele in a new city during COVID, so things haven't been easy. But um, even with me making less money than I was making, I am so much happier, because my state of mind is be you, be true to you, be happy where you are, and I can legit say, even if I'm not making as much money, I'm 10 times happier at
Yeah.
the new shop than at the old
The
shop.
money
And I'm
will
still
come.
building up, and
Yeah.
it's
The
been
money
we're
will
going
come.
on 3 years, and I'm still growing. Luckily I have my little uh I use Square, and it has little write-offs of what you've done previously to the year prior. I'm growing. I've gone up 30% for the year.
Good.
So I love that. I love that for me, and I'm doing it true to me, and I'm not feeling like I've sold myself for $1 now.
Absolutely.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Everyone has a price, but
Pat.
it's much, 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 much higher now than
Absolutely.
it used to be.
Absolutely. It's something a while back that I found interesting. There's always these intersections with race and gender and sexuality. You said something, so among Black people,
Yeah.
when we go to work and we have to turn that switch, right,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
be quote unquote professional,
Mhm.
we call that code switching. It
Yeah.
sounded like that there may be the same thing in queerness. Is
Oh,
there a same
100%.
thing?
100%.
Yeah.
I think so there was an interesting little thing I read years ago, and it stuck with me for a long time, but um it was the book itself was actually about queer culture, and it was a good dictionary of like the things for the past 50 years to now, references and things like that. But it also took it back to like in part of the section of the book, it brought it back to like the Grecians and the and again, how throughout history queer people have been there. We aren't going anywhere. But in one section of the book, it literally talked about this theory that queer people could literally if our nation really wanted to look into like espionage and into spies, things like that, look at the queer community. Look at the community that has to literally hide themselves. Look at the 1980s with New York and with voguing and with
Mhm.
the ballroom scene. You
Yeah.
literally had an entire culture based around fitting in and being undetectable
Mm.
and getting prizes based off of how well you could fit in with society. And with a society that says you should not fit in and that you will never fit in and that you don't belong and that you're never going to be like us, you're never going to make it. You literally had a whole culture based off of that. And
I did not know that about voguing.
yeah, yeah. So voguing came from the ballroom scene, and it was technically the ballroom scene did start as early as I think some say the 50s and 60s, but it got its main staple in the 80s, because you had the huge uh, you had huge culture changes in New York, where you had queer people who were being ignored and dying of AIDS and being cast out from their families, and where you had on the West Coast, you had kind of the hippie revolution, and you had people going there and having the sex positive. Well, on the East Coast, you had everyone was migrating to New York, but New York was such a hard town and a hard city to get it anywhere, because you had all these people saying that again, you don't deserve it. You're trans, you're queer, you're black, you're Hispanic, you're never going to fit in with these um, rich white people who are now making it huge in New York because of stock market, all of that boom. But you
Mhm.
also, give me one second, I got to drink because I'm hearing my voice. You had um, these people. Well, and it's that thing, the irony of the ballroom scene didn't really get a huge name for itself until Madonna came in and made Vogue.
Mhm.
And she got voguing from the ballroom scene. Well, that's
Mhm.
when you first got people actually honing in on what this whole scene is. What do they stand for? And you literally had people. You had mothers of houses. The mothers of the houses were usually the older queer people in the community, usually drag queens, who could gravitate younger queer people to them. And these queer people were, again, being left on the side of the street, being cast out, having to sell themselves, having to sell drugs to make a hustle to survive.
Mhm.
And it was so predominant in the queer community that you had these little bubbles of youth that were getting collected by, or I say collected, that sounds harsh, but getting collected by these elderly queens, and they became their mothers, they became their mentors, they became their family, and from there you also had, so you had the scene outside of the ballroom scene. You had the reaction of the ballroom scene was you had these close knit groups who were looking out for each other, keeping each other safe, because it was so dangerous and so unsafe to be queer in the 80s. And it just it that was,
Interesting
yeah.
because when I look at 80s culture,
Mhm.
I don't know how old you are, but I'll be 50 next year. So I was
Mhm.
coming of age in the 80s.
Yeah.
And like one of my biggest crushes was George Michael.
Yes,
And
yes.
it was just so normal back then for men to wear makeup. Like
Uh-huh.
it
Oh yeah,
never
oh
even
yeah,
occurred to me
like,
that that was weird because it was normal. All the
right.
guys wore makeup in the 80s.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, now you have people who are in their 50s, men in their 50s, who back in my day we were men.
Yeah.
What? Okay. I'm looking
Like,
at
are you
these
mad, boy?
photos. Like, right, like, I dare you in the 80s to take a towel and wipe your face. I just dare you.
Completely.
And it's so stupid because the narrative has changed. And but no, the 80s was a huge start for a lot of queer culture that you see now. I mean,
Even
again,
when
going
I
back.
look at the 70s, like when I think
Mhm.
about some of the outfits that like
Oh, the
the come
tight bell
on,
bottoms.
man, with the glitter on
Yes.
it. Come
I
on.
literally just saw a photo of Van Halen yeah, Van Halen from the 70s, and you could see his veins. Like
I
it's
just
like,
saw that. I
girl, yeah,
just
yeah,
saw
that's,
that.
yes. And it's like they really thought these people were heavy hardcore rockers, the baddest
Yeah.
ass of all badasses. And
They might have been, and also
and that's fine. Yeah, at the time they were, but now the narrative is now you have these people who grew up during that time worshiping these people who look like that. Now looking at the youth of the country who are wearing those skinny jeans and wearing those clothes that are inspired by those generations previous, and saying that you're terrible, you're going to hell for what you're wearing. We got it from you.
Yes.
We got it from you. And I'm sorry, you can take anyone's grandma and go back to the music that was being played at the time, and you cannot tell me that there was no freaking music going on, that there was no sex, drugs, and alcohol like in that music. You can't tell me. It's so stupid. Like, we were all youths, we were all rebels, we were all going and doing and smoking and fucking and all of that. It's fine, but you can't look at the next generation and play the high moral game like you're somehow better. I'm sorry, but there's a reason why your kids are lying, and why your kids are doing certain things, because you used to do it yourself.
That part.
Period.
Period.
It's so silly.
That I'm so grateful that camera phones were not a thing in the 90s.
Oh my God. The amount of people that would have been canceled in the 90s. Cancel culture would have been a 90s thing, a 90s problem, and not a 2020s problem. 100%. But at the same time, how many things could have been avoided? I mean, you wouldn't have had necessarily the Britney Spears and the Princess Dianas of the world, and and that's, talking about queer culture again in the 80s. Princess Diana, she's a perfect example. In the 80s and 90s, she made headlines for being one of the few people to actually approach and shake the hands of somebody with AIDS.
I remember
and it's so sad, but you had Reagan calling it gay cancer. I mean, you had politicians here saying that it was the reckoning, that it was basically the mass exodus of queer people, and that we deserved it.
Yeah,
and
remember that.
The only people that were willing to work with gay AIDS victims were lesbians and lesbian nurses, and that's why and I think that's a big thing, and that's a whole other subject. But queer men need to stop with the sexism, because it is a problem. Racism and sexism. I mean, we got some bigots. We definitely have some bigots in the queer community, but it needs to end. You need to realize that women were there when no one else was. Queer women were there when no one else was. I mean, you look at Marsha P. Hansen. She was a black trans woman. She's the one that threw the first brick at Stonewall. She is the reason queer liberation got started that day. But you have people who are in the LGBT. There's literally a group called the LGB. They literally exclude the T on purpose. Oh yeah, and you have the log cabin gays. Those are gay Republicans. You're literally.
You sound stupid, bro.
You're literally fighting for the people who hate you. You're literally giving votes to people who don't want you to exist. Yeah. And you're cool with that. Jeffree Star, all of a sudden, non-binary people don't exist in their opinion. In his opinion, sorry, he's real strict about that. It's a he now. He's he now. I'm sorry. I remember in early YouTube days, when Jeffree Star identified as Jeffree Star, not as he, not as she, but he would be quick to tell you, don't call him it. So back then, it was cool to look not androgynous and be somewhere in the middle, but now you want to say queer people are just a phase? Or no, non-binary people are just a phase? That we don't actually exist? Cool. Make it make sense.
Wow.
I mean, just this year, the what is it, the stupid beer shit, the beer can.
Budweiser,
it was one can that they came to her for.
Was telling me, so Chris Rock did all that. You got your machine gun and shot at the thing and did all that just to be caught drinking Bud Light the other day.
Yes, and you still have it. I think in his restaurants or something.
Doing all of that?
He still sells it. He's still even then. If you want to look at the bigger name, Anheuser-Busch, they're the ones that made that decision to approach her and come out with a single beer can for her. It wasn't going to be a mass marketing thing. It wasn't going to be. But at the same time, I don't even stand with Anheuser-Busch, because they didn't do shit to defend her. She got death threats. She left the country, and they did nothing to defend her. So I don't even support them for trying to, that's where That's where I would use the word woke in a negative sense. You tried to be woke. You tried to look like you were a friend and ally,
Do the
but
work.
it was false. It was a
Yeah.
false wokeness because you did nothing to defend her. You have still done nothing to defend her. And she literally left the country because she was afraid for her life.
Wow.
What is that? What is that? I mean, you have Elon Musk literally changing what side of the political rivalry he wants to be on out of a temper tantrum because California wanted to stay with COVID laws and stay for longer. He threatened to go to Texas, where it's going to be, no mandates, nothing like that, because it's Texas, and you literally want to change sides and throw all your money to the other side because you didn't get your way. But you're a multi-billionaire throwing a child's temper tantrum. Right. Like,
I understand Tesla, but like,
well, that's not even his. He's not even the one who came up
exactly.
with it.
Like,
He's
it's
the
not
Thomas
even about-
Edison. He's the Thomas Edison. He stole credit for it from two men. And no, you're a rich man who had backing, and you're now the face of it because you had the money to back it. That's all you are.
Yeah.
That's all you are. But you're now making more money off of it than the people who actually invented it. Make it make sense.
Yeah.
Like, it's. But here recently, his child came out as transgendered. And now she doesn't want anything to do with him, and she changed her name. And it's there's a little part of me, the people that really carry hate around with them their whole lives, they tend to get sicker faster. They tend to not live as long because you carry that bitterness, you carry that evil in you. So I'm gonna stay over here pissing people off, doing my best for me. And that's honestly the best way of getting revenge on somebody is living your best life. Not because of them, but just living your best life. That is the best way to get revenge on the haters. And I'm sorry, at the end of the day, you keep on hating the way you're going to hate, you're not going to have a very healthy life. Sorry. I mean, it is what it is.
Absolutely.
I hope the rectal cancer was worth it. That's all I'm going to say. Like, it's just,
specific.
I mean, I've heard that one's pretty gnarly. So, it's you're literally spiting your nose. What is it? Your spite of your nose, spite of your face and spite of your nose, or something like that. Like you're literally the hate is unnecessary. There we go. That's the one. Like these people are literally hating and going out purposely to be hateful. You're putting energy into that.
Yeah.
Why? Why are you wasting your energy? You could literally be silent. It's free. It's easier. You could literally stay in your lane. Right. Instead, you'd rather go in this lane that you don't even understand and then just spread dumb shit. Like you'd rather lie about it. You don't even know what you're talking about, but you're doing it for clout. You're doing it for views, whatever the reason.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't understand it.
Okay, so we have got to start winding down because I've had you here for about an hour, but I have two more things that I want to talk about just kind of briefly each thing. So the first thing is it's important to be who you are, right? At work. But also there can come a point where the overlap can be quote unquote unprofessional.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that and how did you learn, like, here's what's appropriate and here's what maybe I should just be talking about this thing when I'm at home, not behind the chair.
Yes. Definitely. I go into it, I go in my best behavior when it's a new client. I go into it with best behavior, dotting the T's, crossing the I's, and I said that backwards, but it's fine. And, I really hold back on cursing, anything like that. And now I will say that our salon is a very rambunctious group in a good way. We have a lot of energy. We have a lot of things going. You never know what you're going to get in there. If you've ever met Keon the barber, you would know exactly what I'm talking about because that man is he's a pretty big name in the industry, but he is a firecracker. He's nonstop on, and it's hilarious. So there's definitely where we have to have gray areas of when are you starting to get a little too close to the line, and you need to back it off. So for each other, we actually have a sign. We have a code word in our shop, and it's beep beep. If you're starting to get a little too close, you're starting to get to that line, or I have a child in my and we're always better on our best behavior when there's kids in, because we are kid friendly, we're family friendly. You know, at the same time, once you get to know your people and you get to have that relationship, you know what they're about, you know what they like, what they don't like, you know which ones you need to tame it down for, which ones are gonna, yes, queen, like, want to be there for the whole experience, and want, and are, energy driven, and like high energy and high everything. I'm actually one of the quiet ones in the shop. Yeah, I know that's hard to believe. But as far as actual volume level and all of that, I keep it lower. And I do have some sensory issues with that. Loud noises just are a thing for me. It's just and that's a thing. But luckily, with like my manager, she is one of the louder personalities. Her and the owner, they're probably the two biggest personalities in the shop. And me and her, we know. She knows how I can be and how and it's not a personal thing. It's literally my brain, my ears are hurting. So we just have words, and we have open communication about when is the time and when is not the time. And with her specifically, she does have the most sailor mouth, potty mouths out of all of us. So it's, again, beep, beep. Know when to say it. Know, and then she'll know with all the regulars who are the ones that she can be dialed up to 11 and which one she needs to be more like a 6 or a 7. We know that with each other, and we know that with our clients, and we know also, if it does accidentally get a little too rambunctious, beep beep. So we install, and that just works for us. We instilled literally a way of, all right, calm it down. Let's bring it back to professional, or at least fun and professional, not too much. We just can't. And I love that we have to dial it down as opposed to being boring and quiet all day, like and or whatever, like, and I think that each individual shop is definitely, each one has its own vibe, each one has its own personality, each one has its own little just quirks about it. I think for us, it's definitely not that we're low energy and that we're boring. It's more that we like to have fun, and we have to sometimes dial it back. But it's, luckily, if it ever gets to a point, so that's the other thing, we are very diverse, and we do have at times where it feels like and you would know what this means, a stereotypical black barbershop, where there's discussions that can get loud, but they're not arguing. They're discussing, and they're having conversations. Passion. Exactly. There are times where I may have somebody who has never been around that before, who has never witnessed that before, and it's like, okay, I have to at least, and usually it's explaining to them, they're not fighting. This is not fighting. As long as everyone's having a good time, and everyone is definitely having a good time. And so, it's one of those things where a lot of my clientele that return from me, they come from Anderson. A lot of them are open-minded because they stuck with me, and that's one thing I joke, and I'm like, y'all had to have been open-minded to stick with me for this long, because damn, like, if you're bigoted and you stay with me this whole time, I don't know why you're making yourself miserable, because like, I'm not the one. And so luckily I have that little bit of a fear in my head that some of these people do that, and then eventually I just said, you know what, that's their problem. If they want to come in here and force that if they somehow want to be victim of hearing this wokeness or whatever, that's on them. I'm just going to assume that everyone that's still with me at this point, because again, like, I've now come out of my shell, I'm very blatantly queer and non-binary, I'm out and proud about it. If they're still with me and you're a bigot, okay. I don't know why. Good for you. But, and I think I did lose a couple people. I lost some people when they started seeing the vibe of the shop, and I don't care. I don't care. That was a needed change for you. Hopefully you're now with somebody that you can be whatever with, talk about whatever with, and have whatever views you want. Cool. That's not my lane. That's not my business. You do you. Until it's brought out for the world to hear your opinion, I'm not going to have anything to say. So that's it, and luckily the transition was very easy. Again, if they did have certain types of feelings, they didn't make it known and they just left. Cool. That's fine. Clientele comes and goes, as that. They come and go. That's totally fine. But yeah, luckily, I think for us, what's been really good is having that, like I said, that inside joke of this is the word to say when we're getting a little too rambunctious.
Yeah. That's a
And
good one. Yeah.
yeah, and I do have clients where I do break the cardinal rules of don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics, don't talk about any of those big topics. I break that with some of my people, but it's because I know them. They've been with me for years. They already know my views. It's a discussion of like-mindedness. It's not, and even if it does become a difference in views, it can still stay professional. But you need to know tact. You need to know how to navigate that social dynamic of maybe we should change the subject, maybe we should get out of this, maybe we should direct that. And in the beginning that can be really hard. At the same time, I think that there are people who could do that from the get-go because you have social butterflies who know how to navigate that. But I don't think that that necessarily has to coincide with the job in particular. I think that you can learn that outside of working with people. I think that you should learn that, period. You should know how to be tactful. You should know how to navigate through social awkwardness and be able to communicate your feelings in a way that's professional, and you don't have to go to 100. You can have a discussion. It doesn't have to be an argument. It doesn't have to be, and that's the other thing. Don't go into it necessarily wanting to sway somebody, because I'm sorry, you can give every single point house down boots and they're still not going to see your point of view because they don't want to. And you have to be okay with that. So it does take a level of maturity. It does have to take a level of social awareness and intelligence. But I think that this industry kind of requires that in general. I think you can get farther in this industry with a good personality than with skills necessarily. I think that if you had the skills and had a shit personality, you're not going to make it as far as the person beside you who can't do as good of a haircut but has the better personality. So hopefully, if you're even thinking about this industry, you already have a good not people pleaser, because I don't like that term, but you have a good ability to work with people in general. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I am very much a introverted extrovert. I am an introvert until there is a paycheck. Yep. Once that paycheck is there, oh yeah, I am 100% a people person. Yeah, like I can turn it on, but it's definitely I have to mentally turn it on. Where me turned off is just super chill, super quiet. I just want to sit, vibe, and paint, and do hair, and come and go, and eventually at some point, financially comfortable would be nice. If I could, monetize enough off of my hobbies to make it, then that's the goal. Yes. And like I said, I think for me, providing a safe space, the fact that people know that about us, you're already going to know what kind of vibe you're getting at the shop. You already know that if you're MAGA 2024, you're not really gonna like us. That's just not the vibe. Yeah. So, and luckily Keon is an even bigger personality, and he's been doing it the same amount of time as well. He was licensed a year before me. But when I say he skyrocketed and did so much with his platform and his name, the fact that if you know who he is, you already know what the vibe of the shop is.
What is his name? Keon what?
Keon the Barber. Keon the Barber is his everything on social media, and then Keon Washington is actually his name as far as legalities. But yeah, he would be an amazing one for your podcast for sure. Okay. That man is a genius.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. I will look him up, but I have one more question, and then after this question, we gotta give everybody how to find you. I could literally have this conversation with you for hours.
I mean, I definitely, if you ever want to do it again, I'm 100% down, because I have hours of content I could probably fill up.
Awesome. I will hold you to do that.
Definitely.
But I wanted to, so for me, I'm still behind the chair part-time.
Okay.
And my absolute favorite people ever are my queer clients. Yeah. They tend to be trans women specifically. And working with them, so in the beginning, it was just about, I have family members who are trans, and I want for them to have a safe place to go to get, where people aren't being weird with them. But it didn't occur to me until I started working with queer and trans people specifically that when you're going through this transition, one of the first things that you tend to change is your hair, right?
Yes, definitely.
And how important that experience is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so just what can we do as stylists behind the chair um, to make sure that we're creating space for people to feel comfortable and safe when they sit in our chair?
I, you know, for that one, I can't even say it's a professionalism thing. I think it's you and your spirit within, you and your heart and soul need to be okay with with transgender community in general.
Hmm.
You need to have zero hate in your heart for that. And to me, there can be zero room for any kind of bigoted opinions or anything like that. So you have to come at it with an open heart, an open mind, and I think that part right there is the biggest hurdle, and I think that's probably the biggest thing to filter out stylists who are not meant to work with the queer community because they have that heart, that hate in their heart, and that judgment in their heart, and that's the big one, for me, in my opinion, because I'm
Hmm.
sorry, that's where a lot of those, what you may think is a harmless, let me do what I think they want or what I want them to have,
It can be
that's where
devastating.
you're starting to abuse that trust and you're starting to put your filter on them. And
Hmm.
that can be extremely toxic, that can be extremely manipulative, and that can be extremely harmful to the client.
Yeah.
So, I honestly think you shouldn't enter this industry if you have any kind of hatred towards anyone for something they can't change about themselves. Um, I think that this is not the right industry for that. And unfortunately, I have had online discussions. We'll say it that way. And I have called out stylists who do not have that same belief system. And these are local people, and I've witnessed it, and I've heard stories about it, and I've worked with. So we have the Queer Wellness Center here, and I did a workshop with them, and it was more just me coming in showing things that you can do for haircuts and hairstyles to show the difference in masculine and feminine, or you say softening and hardening lines and
Yeah.
shapes, and to masculate facial features and to feminize facial features. So these are terms that you should be at least aware of. When it comes to hair, it's about shapes and lines and flow to give you a image in the end, and
Yeah.
you should be able to want to
Soften
go
and
on that
line.
journey. Yeah, and you should want to be able to go on that journey with that client. And
Yeah.
like I said it, I think at the beginning when I was ranting, and it's an honor whenever I get to go on that transition with them. But
Yes.
why is it any different than a client, a woman who comes in and wants to go on a hair journey with you to grow their
Hmm.
hair out? Why is that any different? Why is it any different to take, if a cis woman came in and said that they wanted to come out looking like G.I. Jane, why would you say no? Why
Hmm.
would you say no? They are the paying client, and they know what they want. They're a grown adult or whatever, and you should be willing to, if at least anything, tell them you're not comfortable with it and be upfront with them from the start, as opposed to lying and saying that you can deliver what they're asking for and do what you want on top of it. That is betrayal. And I'm sorry, but we as hairstylists, we get the privy of hearing important things and secrets and things first. Sometimes we get to be
Hmm.
some of the most trusted people in these people's lives sometimes, because I don't ask me why that phenomenon happens, but when someone trusts you with their hair, they trust you with the rest of their lives.
Hmm.
And you have literally in certain states where it's required for you to take classes to know how to deal with that, to know, I think in Massachusetts they made it to where you have to know like women's shelters and things like that, like how to navigate someone on how to get help if they're being abused, if they're being neglected, whatever. You're taught that in these states because we are so close to being their therapists, being emotional support, and there's so much responsibility that comes with that. Um, that, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there are people in the trans community who get burnt really bad by stylists, and unfortunately, it's a thing of they have to build that trust up with someone new, and there's times where you can be like going with someone whose ex cheated on them. It can feel like that sometimes because you now have this trust issue with the entire community of hairstylists because you got one old biddy who didn't want to do what you wanted and instead gave you, grandma haircut or Karen cut instead of the edgy, badass thing that you actually came in and wanted. And unfortunately, and it may not, and we don't even see it all the time with a purposely trying to do harm. You see it with just people who are too confident in what they can do or who are told not to say no. But when it comes to something like that, where you have that transition and you have that emotional support, I mean, it's the same thing with women who have emotional support to their long hair and they ask for a trim and you take 4 inches off. That can emotionally destroy somebody for, however long. That can be emotionally impactful on them. Why would you take and do that purposely? Why would you purposely hurt anybody? Just tell them you can't do it, that you're not comfortable, and move on. Let them go find someone who is willing, who is comfortable, who actually knows the community and has respect for the community. Don't lie. Just don't lie. And because you're going to end up looking like an ass in the end anyways.
And you potentially cause harm.
Yeah, 100%. And, it's just not smart. So.
Thank you so much, Corrigan.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
I've learned some things.
Yay.
So I'm super excited. I always love when I learn something new.
I love that. I love it. Yes.
Yeah, this has been so good. I definitely would love to chat with you again. Maybe one of these days we can do like a live stream or something.
Well, I'll say one of these days, and the next time I'll make sure to use either my tablet or phone or something, so you actually have an image to go with the I'm not gonna lie, I did kind of appreciate not having to put on makeup because I don't have a camera right now.
Understood. No worries.
I mean, I may or may not have put perfume on though because I needed to smell good for this not face-to-face interaction.
Bad bitch is gonna bad bitch, okay?
Right. I'm at least gonna smell good and feel like I look good for this face-to-face interview.
Absolutely. Where can the audience catch up with you if they'd like to follow your movement?
So yeah, I am on Instagram. It is cq.hair.artistry. I'm also on Facebook as Corrigan Quinn. I have that, and I also have my CQ Hair Artistry, the professional page. But I'm one of those. I don't care. You can try and cuss me out on my regular page or on my professional page. It's fine. I will interact with you either way. So yeah, both are good. And then the Instagram is good. And then as far as my paint, anything with painting, I have a second Instagram, and it is Corey Quinn Art. And that is CORRIQUINN for Corey Quinn. But yeah, as far as all the hair stuff, that's the CQ Hair Artistry.
Love it.
Thank you so much.
Later on today.
Oh yeah, I just started it. I literally in the past month have just actually tried to start monetizing off of my painting. Yeah, I'm finally getting some self-esteem in my own art. At 32, so it's never too late.
And it only gets better as you get older. The older you get, the less fucks you give. Don't even worry about it.
That's exactly what happened in my 30s. I'll be 33 in December, and that's exactly it. I care so little, and the trauma is just like, no, you can't. First of all, you can never say anything meaner than what I've told myself. I dare you. I might actually applaud you if you say something meaner than I've said to myself. But life's too short to give a fuck what everyone else thinks. But what I won't have is people trying to dictate my life based off of their religious or personal beliefs. That's where I draw the line. You can have your beliefs by all means. Just don't try to force me to do it.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. This has been so much fun.
Yes. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much for listening. If you're a beauty pro with a story to tell, or you have a stylist you'd like to hear from, you can DM me via IG at Auntie Hair Coach, or use the Contact Me form on tasha-davis.com. Or if you're feeling really spicy, send an audio message in Spotify. Whether you loved it or hated it, Please leave a rating, like, and or a follow because it does something fancy with the algorithm. I'm Auntie Hair Coach. Ta-ta for now.
Oh, yeah. I'm so glad you could make it.